like the definition of traditionalist. You know me a little. I am not really a traditionalist. I am a defender of the natural family. Yes, I am a defender of life. I do not like interventions that affect the body of the unborn child, or the elderly, or the disabled. I am anti-abortion. I am certainly not, I believe, the only anti-abortionist. I prefer to defend the child's right to be born, and I prefer to imagine that that child is really a person who has no voice, that through our voice he or she can be heard and thus arrive at birth without being touched in his or her right to live. In my opinion, the right to be born should be universal. It is written in the Constitution. If we start from the point of view that our history, mine and yours, was born on the day of conception, and there is no doubt that it is, our uniqueness was born at that moment. To touch that uniqueness is to eliminate a person from the face of the earth, and that is something unacceptable. Mother Teresa of Calcutta, on the day she received the Nobel Peace Prize, said, "We shall not have peace as long as it is possible for a mother to suppress the child in her womb." She was a prophet, probably, given what we are also experiencing in these weeks, in these months. It doesn't sound like tradition to me. It sounds perfectly natural to me. Tradition is not a dirty word. Tradition. For me it is something very significant. But beware. Tradition is what is handed down from the history of civilization. Exactly the history of our civilization, from the Hippocratic Oath. Doctors swore never to administer an abortifacient drug that would cause death. And a few years ago it was decided to rewrite the Hippocratic Oath. When you start touching the cornerstones of a civilization, you start having difficulty, in my opinion, in then defining what a civilization is. I am for the universal right to be born. This is very clear. Civil rights. For me, a civil right, for example, is to have a maternity income. If you are a woman who has to have a child and you don't have a job, then that is a civil right for me. If you are severely disabled, in absolute difficulty, to have family and the state to help you, to give you a hand, not to inject you with pentobarbital to get you out of the way. Even if you want it, wanting it. The size of the will of a very fragile person can be induced by culture and laws. In fact, the curves in countries where euthanasia has been introduced, surprisingly for those who do not study these effects, are very low at first. Progressively, over the years they multiply with monstrous percentages. What happened? Did they suddenly become all the sick people? How good? No. A culture has entered into which the fragile has become a burden and a cost. If we accept that kind of culture, the fragile becomes a burden, the fragile becomes a cost. Sooner or later the frail will be eliminated. He will even be persuaded to say, "Eliminate me." I have experienced fragility. We all, I believe, have experiences. To introduce a culture that wants to crush life, in my opinion, is something absolutely inhuman, which also reminds us of the real historical experiences that eliminated the disabled with a very precise choice, because it was a way of contracting costs. Let me say what I believe. We all have beliefs or ideas, but my job is, how should I put it, to clearly represent the complexity of the thing. On the family. The family is the lintel. There is nothing to be done. There we end up. We always end up with the family. Important today that families are in great difficulty because of the wicked choices of parties and government that have brought families enormous suffering. Well, we understand well how necessary it is to choose an alternative, so that we can return to peace, to being able to pay decent bills as a family, to being able to have salaries that are not attacked by inflation. The government recognizes the family as a natural society founded on marriage. As you know, marriage in our legal system is between a man and a woman. The fact that the Republic recognizes the family means that it considers it a reality. Pope Francis speaks of ideological colonization when they only want to give you money if you accept what the supranational body tells you. Pope Francis coined this wonderful expression. It is ideological colonization. I am against ideological colonization. Let us take back our wonderful history. The society of the years when these values were central was a more serene, richer, more productive society. Now I see a society of millions of people who live with a bottle of psychotropic drugs on their bedside table, otherwise they don't get up. It is an unhappy society that cannot make peace with the idea of freedom, because the idea of freedom, if it is not combined with the profound idea of truth, is a disensouled freedom. Disensouled freedom leads to ship